I watched Marcus check his phone for the third time in 10 minutes, his jaw tight as he read whatever message had just come through. I already knew what he was going to say. "Babe, I'm so sorry," he started, and I felt that familiar twist in my chest. Except this time, it wasn't heartbreak. It was vindication. My mom really needs me to drive her to her book club meeting. You know how she gets anxious about highway driving. I smiled serenely and took a sip of my coffee. Of course, family first. His eyes widened slightly. In my previous life, this moment had ended with me in tears, begging him to stay, promising I'd wait again. We'd been dating for 3 years, and in those 3 years, I'd been stood up 67 times. I'd counted them all in the months before I died. "You're not upset?" Marcus looked almost disappointed. "Why would I be upset? Your mother needs you." I gathered my purse, leaving money for my coffee on the table. "I actually have some things to take care of anyway." "Wait, Lily." He reached for my hand, but I was already standing. "We can reschedule." "Next Saturday?" "Sure," I said, knowing there would be no next Saturday. Not for us, anyway. As I walked out of the cafe, I pulled out my phone and unblocked a number I'd deleted in my previous life. The number that had tried to reach me 43 times before I died, each call ignored because Marcus had convinced me that answering would be disrespectful to our relationship. The number belonged to James Chen, the CEO of Chen Industries, who in my previous life had been trying to tell me that I was his biological daughter. Let me take you back to how I got here. To this moment of crystalline clarity in a coffee shop where I'd wasted so many afternoons waiting for a man who would never prioritize me. I died on my 28th birthday. Marcus had canceled our anniversary dinner. Yes, he'd scheduled our anniversary on my birthday, which should have been my first red flag, because his mother had an emergency that turned out to be her wanting him to reorganize her garage. I'd spent the evening alone in our apartment, the apartment I paid for because Marcus was building his startup, which consisted mainly of playing video games and attending networking events without me. I'd been crying, scrolling through old photos of us, wondering where I'd gone wrong when I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Heart attack, the doctors would later determine, brought on by years of untreated stress and anxiety. 28 years old, and I'd literally died of a broken heart. But I didn't stay dead. I woke up on my 23rd birthday, 5 years earlier, in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Marcus, the canceled dates, the loneliness, the death. Then I saw the date on my phone and understood. I'd been given a second chance. In my previous life, I'd met Marcus 3 months after this moment, at a gallery opening I'd attended alone because my mother, the woman who'd raised me, said she had a headache. He'd been charming, attentive, interested in my work as a graphic designer. He'd love-bombed me for 3 months, then slowly started canceling plans. First occasionally, then constantly. But he always had a reason, always made me feel guilty for being upset, always promised next time would be different. His mother, Patricia, had been the architect of most of our canceled plans. Marcus was her only son, her baby, her entire world. She'd never approved of me. I wasn't wealthy enough, connected enough, sophisticated enough. But she'd been clever about it. She never banned Marcus from seeing me. Instead, she'd manufactured emergencies, guilt-tripped him with her anxiety and health problems, and slowly trained him to prioritize her over everything else in his life. I'd lost myself trying to win her approval. I'd lost friendships, career opportunities, and ultimately my health and my life, all waiting for Marcus to finally choose me. But the real tragedy wasn't Marcus or Patricia. The real tragedy was James Chen. In my previous life, James had started calling me 6 months before I died. My mother, the woman I'd called mom for 23 years, had finally confessed on her deathbed that I was adopted. Not just adopted, but stolen. She'd been a nurse at the hospital where I was born, and in a moment of desperate grief after her own daughter was stillborn, she'd swapped the hospital bracelets and taken me home. James Chen had spent 28 years searching for his missing daughter. His wife had died in childbirth, and I was all he had left of her. He'd never remarried, never stopped looking. When he finally found me, I was so deep in Marcus's manipulation that I'd thought James was a scammer. Marcus had convinced me not to answer, not to engage, to block the number. These rich people prey on vulnerable women like you, Marcus had said, holding me while I cried over my adoptive mother's confession. They'll claim you're their long-lost heir, then drain you dry. I'm just trying to protect you. I'd believed him. I'd blocked James Chen's number and never learned the truth until after I died, when I watched from somewhere beyond life as James stood at my grave, an old man broken by grief, holding a DNA test that proved I was his daughter. Now, I had a chance to fix everything. The decision to stop being a victim came the morning after my rebirth when I woke up and checked my calendar. In 3 months, I would meet Marcus at that gallery opening. In 6 months, he would move into my apartment. In 2 years, he would propose with a ring I would later discover I'd paid for via a joint credit card he'd maxed out. In 5 years, I would die alone, waiting for him to come home. Not this time. I spent the first week of my rebirth gathering information. I created fake social media accounts and researched Marcus. I discovered things I'd been too blinded by love to see the first time around. He'd had 2 girlfriends before me, both lasting about 3 years, both ending when the women finally demanded he set boundaries with his mother. He had a pattern, a system. Find a kind, successful woman with low self-esteem, love bomb her, slowly isolate her, let his mother sabotage the relationship until the woman either left or, in my case, died. I researched Patricia too. She'd been married 3 times. Marcus's father had died when Marcus was young, but the 2 stepfathers had both left her, citing her unhealthy attachment to her son. She'd raised Marcus to be her emotional support animal, her replacement husband, her entire identity. Then I researched James Chen. He was everything Marcus had claimed to be but wasn't. Self-made billionaire, tech innovator, philanthropist. He'd built Chen Industries from nothing after immigrating from Taiwan at 19. The love story between him and his wife, Elizabeth, was legendary in business circles. They'd been partners in every sense, building the company together until her death during childbirth. My birth. I found interviews where James talked about his missing daughter, his voice breaking. I found the private investigators he'd hired, the reward money he'd posted, the foundation he'd created in Elizabeth's name that gave scholarships to young women in STEM fields. I found photos of Elizabeth, and I saw my own face staring back at me. The same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same way of smiling with just one corner of the mouth lifted. I cried for 3 days, mourning the father I'd rejected, the life I'd thrown away, the love I'd never known I was worthy of receiving. Then I stopped crying and started planning. The first phase of my plan was simple: don't meet Marcus. When the gallery opening invitation arrived, sent by a college friend who'd dropped me in my previous life after I'd canceled on her too many times to attend to Marcus's emergencies, I RSVP'd yes and actually showed up. Not only did I show up, but I brought my portfolio and networked aggressively, getting business cards from 3 potential clients. When Marcus approached me at the drinks table, giving me the same opening line he'd used in my previous life, "You look like someone who actually understands art, unlike these pretentious phonies." I smiled politely and said, "Excuse me, I'm actually meeting someone," and walked away. I watched him from across the room as he tried the same line on another woman. She laughed and gave him her number. I felt a flicker of pity for her, but I couldn't save everyone. I could barely save myself. The second phase was harder. Contact James. I'd unblocked his number the day after Marcus canceled our coffee date. The coffee date that would have been our first anniversary in my previous life. Though in this timeline, we'd never even gone on a first date. I'd been testing Marcus, curious if the patterns would hold even without our relationship. They did. He'd asked me out via social media, I'd agreed to meet him for coffee, and he'd canceled. Some things were simply inevitable with men like Marcus, but I wasn't inevitable anymore. I stared at James's number for 3 hours before I finally called. It rang twice before a deep, warm voice answered. "Hello?" My mouth went dry. "Is this James Chen?" "Yes." "Who's calling?" "My name is Lily Morrison. I think you've been looking for me." The silence that followed was so profound I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard a sound that broke my heart. A man's sob, quickly stifled. "Lily," he breathed. "Lily Elizabeth Chen." "I'd like to meet you," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'd like to take a DNA test. I'd like to know the truth." Yes, he said immediately. Yes, anything. When? Where? I can come to you, or I can send a car, or There's a cafe called Meridian on 5th Street. Do you know it? I'll find it. When? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll be there. He paused. Lily, thank you. Thank you for calling. I've been searching for so long. I know, I said softly. I'm sorry I didn't answer sooner. James Chen looked younger than I'd expected, or maybe just well-preserved for 62. He was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, and he stood up so fast when he saw me that he knocked over his water glass. Lily, he said, and I watched his eyes fill with tears as he took in my face. You look exactly like her, like Elizabeth. I sat down across from him and we stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, I said, Tell me about her, about my mother. He did. For 2 hours, he told me about Elizabeth Chen, brilliant scientist, fierce negotiator, terrible cook, perfect partner, how they'd met in a programming class at university, how she'd proposed to him because he was too nervous, how they'd built Chen Industries together, her handling the science while he handled the business, how excited they'd been when they found out she was pregnant, how she'd hemorrhaged during delivery, how the nurses had rushed her to surgery while a different nurse took me to the nursery, how when he'd finally been allowed to see his wife, she was gone, and when he'd asked to hold his daughter, the nurses couldn't find me. The bracelet had been swapped, James said, his voice hollow. Security footage showed a nurse leaving with a baby wrapped in a pink blanket, but her face was turned away from the camera. By the time anyone realized what had happened, she was gone. You were gone. Nancy Morrison, I said. The woman who raised me. She confessed before she died. She said she'd lost her baby and couldn't bear it. James nodded slowly. I know, I found her 3 years ago, but by then she was in hospice. The doctors said her mind was mostly gone. I tried to visit, to ask where you were, but she didn't recognize me. She just kept calling for her daughter. She died thinking I was hers, I said. And I thought she was my mother. She wasn't a bad person, you know. She was just broken. I know. James reached across the table, then hesitated. May I? I put my hand in his, and his fingers closed around mine with desperate gentleness. I've missed 23 years of your life, he said. I can't get those back. But I'd like to be part of whatever time we have left. If you'll let me. I'd like that too. I squeezed his hand. But there's something you should know. I'm not looking for money or... I don't care, he interrupted. Even if the DNA test comes back negative, though I know it won't, I can see Elizabeth in every feature of your face. Even if you weren't my biological daughter, I'd still want to know you. You called me. You gave me hope. That alone is a gift I can never repay. The DNA test came back a week later. 99% probability of paternity. I had a father. Getting to know James was like discovering a part of myself I'd never known was missing. He was brilliant, driven, but also surprisingly funny and warm. He showed me photos of my mother, videos of her giving presentations at conferences, talking with that same half-smile I saw in my own mirror. He introduced me to his world slowly, carefully, always asking if I was comfortable, never pushing. He wanted to throw me a party to introduce me to his business associates, but I asked him to wait. I need to handle some things first, I told him. There are people who knew me in my old life, and I need to make sure they know about you on my terms. What I didn't tell him was that I was waiting for Marcus, because Marcus, like a bad penny, always turned up. It happened 3 months after I'd reconnected with James. I was having lunch at an upscale restaurant, the kind I could now easily afford thanks to James insisting on giving me a reasonable allowance, which turned out to be more money than I'd made in a year at my old job, when I heard a familiar voice. Lily Morrison? I turned to see Marcus standing there, looking surprised and delighted. He'd probably been trolling the expensive restaurants looking for wealthy women to target. His eyes flickered over my designer outfit, the expensive watch James had given me, the black credit card lying next to my phone. Marcus, I said coolly, what a surprise. I didn't know you ate here. This place is usually out of my... I mean, it's great to see you. It's been, what, a few months since that gallery? Has it? I took a sip of my wine. I hadn't noticed. His smile faltered. This wasn't how I'd responded to him in our previous life. Back then, I'd been falling all over myself to impress him, to make him like me, to be worthy of his attention. You look amazing, he said. That dress is incredible. Thank you. I didn't elaborate, didn't invite him to sit, didn't ask about his mother. So, what have you been up to? Still doing graphic design? Actually, I've been transitioning into art direction. I'm working on some projects with Chen Industries. His eyes widened. Chen Industries? The tech company? That's the one. How did you land that? That's huge. I smiled mysteriously. I have connections. This was clearly killing him. In his mind, I was supposed to be the mousy, insecure girl he could manipulate. Instead, I was confident, successful, and completely uninterested in him. We should get coffee sometime, he said. Catch up properly? I'm pretty busy these days, but sure, give me your number and I'll text you. He did, eagerly. I saved it under blocked and had no intention of ever using it. But Marcus, predictable as clockwork, didn't give up. He started texting me daily. Casual at first. Hope you're having a great day. Then more pointed. Would love to hear more about your work with Chen Industries. Then almost desperate. Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? I let him stew for 2 weeks before I finally responded. Sorry, been swamped. Free for coffee Tuesday at 2? His response came in seconds. Yes, that works great. Same place as before? Perfect. I showed up on time. Marcus showed up 10 minutes late, which in my previous life had been standard, but now felt like a test. Sorry, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Traffic was insane. No problem. I'd already finished half my coffee. So, what did you want to talk about? He blinked. I just wanted to catch up, see how you've been. You've seemed different lately. Different how? More confident, successful, it's attractive. He leaned forward. I feel like I made a mistake, not pursuing you when we first met. I'd really like another chance. There it was, the love bombing phase. In my previous life, this was where he'd swept me off my feet, made me feel special, made me fall in love with him. I'm flattered, I said. But I'm actually seeing someone. His face fell. Oh, is it serious? Very. He's wonderful, supportive, kind, successful. He actually shows up when we make plans. I smiled sweetly. That's great. I'm happy for you. He wasn't. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. Can I ask who he is? Just someone I met through work. I gathered my things. It was nice catching up, Marcus. Best of luck with everything. I left him sitting there and I felt lighter than I had in years. But Marcus wasn't done. Over the next 2 months, he tried everything. He showed up at my apartment building. I'd moved to a luxury high-rise in James's building, claiming he just happened to be in the neighborhood. He friend requested me on every social media platform. He even tried to apply for a job at Chen Industries, though his resume was rejected in the first screening round. Then he got desperate. He reached out to my old college friend Sarah, the one who'd invited me to the gallery opening. Lily's changed, he told her, according to the screenshots she sent me. She's gotten cold and materialistic. I'm worried about her. That Chen Industries guy she's dating is probably using her. Sarah, bless her, responded, She seems happier than I've ever seen her. Maybe she just grew up. But Marcus had planted a seed, and soon I started hearing whispers. People from my old life, people who'd known me as the quiet, anxious girl who'd put up with anything, were now wondering if I'd sold out or gotten too big for my britches. It hurt, but not as much as dying alone had hurt. Then Marcus made his biggest mistake. He contacted James's office, claiming to be my boyfriend and demanding a meeting to discuss my well-being. James called me immediately. There's a young man named Marcus Sterling in my lobby claiming you're being taken advantage of. Should I have security remove him? A slow smile spread across my face. No, let him come up. I think it's time we had a conversation. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in James's executive office with James behind his massive desk and Marcus in one of the guest chairs, looking confused and increasingly nervous. Mr. Sterling, James said, his voice cold. You claimed my daughter is being taken advantage of. I'd like to hear your evidence. Marcus's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, shock, calculation. Daughter, I didn't know you had a... Lily, is this true? James Chen is my biological father, I said calmly. We reconnected a few months ago. But you never mentioned... We talked about your family and you said... We talked for about 15 minutes at a gallery opening, and you asked me out for coffee and then canceled, I corrected. We're not friends, Marcus. We're barely acquaintances. His face flushed red. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. You've changed so much, and I was worried that I was being used. James leaned forward. Let me be clear, Mr. Sterling. Lily is my daughter. She's also my heir, the vice president of creative development at my company, and one of the smartest people I know. If anyone was at risk of being used in this scenario, I'd be more concerned about wealthy young women falling prey to manipulative men who prey on their insecurities. Marcus stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't, I agreed. But before you go, I want you to understand something. You saw me as an easy target. A lonely girl with low self-esteem who'd put up with being canceled on, being stood up, being treated as an afterthought. And in another life, you would have been right, but not this time. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I stood too, meeting his eyes. You do this to women. You love bomb them, then you let your mother sabotage the relationship until they're so desperate for your approval that they'll accept any crumb of attention. You did it to Jessica Morrison. You did it to Rachel Kim. You tried to do it to me. His face had gone pale. How do you... I did my research. I talked to your exes. They were very forthcoming once they realized they weren't alone. I walked to the door and opened it. Security will see you out. Don't contact me again. He left, but not before shooting me a look of pure hatred. Good. I wanted him to hate me. Hate was honest. I thought that would be the end of it, but I'd underestimated Patricia Sterling's determination to control her son's life. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. An actual physical letter written in flowery script on expensive stationery. Dear Ms. Morrison, I'm writing to you as a mother concerned for her son. Marcus has been devastated since your rejection of his genuine affection. He truly cared for you, and your cold dismissal has caused him considerable pain. I understand you've recently come into money and status, and I can only assume this has gone to your head, but I want you to know that money cannot buy class, and your behavior toward my son has shown your true character. Marcus is a sensitive, caring young man who deserves better than to be toyed with by a gold digger who's forgotten where she came from. I hope you'll reflect on your actions and consider apologizing to him. Sincerely, Patricia Sterling. I read the letter 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each reading. Then I did something that would have terrified the old Lily. I called Patricia. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Mrs. Sterling, this is Lily Morrison. I received your letter. Oh. She sounded surprised that I'd called. Well, I hope you took its message to heart. I did. And I'd like to invite you to lunch to discuss it. Are you free tomorrow? Suspicion crept into her voice. Why would you want to have lunch with me? Because I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot and I'd like to clear the air for Marcus's sake. The lie came easily. Well, I suppose that would be acceptable. Where did you have in mind? I named the restaurant where Marcus had first approached me, the expensive one. I knew Patricia wouldn't be able to resist. I'll see you at noon, she said, and hung up. Patricia Sterling arrived 15 minutes late, which I'd expected. Power play. She was dressed in obviously expensive but slightly outdated designer clothing, the kind that screamed, "I have money but no actual style." "Ms. Morrison," she said, looking around the restaurant with barely concealed envy. "This is quite a venue." "I thought you'd appreciate it." I gestured to the seat across from me. "Please sit. I've already ordered some appetizers." She sat, eyeing me with the same calculation I'd seen in Marcus's eyes. "You said you wanted to discuss Marcus." "Actually, I wanted to discuss you." Her eyebrows rose. "Me?" "I've been thinking about your letter, about how you described Marcus as sensitive and caring. And I realized something. You actually believe that." "Of course I do. He's my son." "He's your emotional support animal," I corrected gently. "You've raised him to prioritize your needs over everything else in his life. You've sabotaged every relationship he's ever had because you can't stand the idea of him loving someone more than he loves you." Her face flushed an ugly red. "How dare you say, 'I dare because I'm not afraid of you'?" I leaned forward. "You tried to play the same games with me that you've played with every other woman Marcus has dated. The manufactured emergencies, the guilt trips, the constant need for his attention. But I saw through it." "Marcus needs me," she said, her voice shaking. "His father died when he was young, and I've sacrificed everything for him." "You've sacrificed him," I interrupted. "You've turned him into a man who can't maintain a healthy relationship, who preys on women with low self-esteem because they're the only ones who'll tolerate his behavior. You've ruined your son's life because you couldn't deal with your own grief and loneliness." Patricia stood up, her chair scraping loudly. I don't have to listen to this. You're a vindictive, cruel woman." "Sit down, Mrs. Sterling." My voice was steel. "I'm not done." Something in my tone made her hesitate. She sat. "I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. In another life, I would have been the perfect victim for you and Marcus. I would have put up with the cancellations, the manipulation, the emotional abuse. I would have slowly destroyed myself trying to be good enough for a man who was never going to choose me over his mother. I would have died never knowing what it felt like to be truly loved." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. "But I'm not that person anymore. I found my real father. I discovered I'm worth more than being someone's second choice. And now I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you and Marcus really are." "You can't prove anything," Patricia said, but her voice was weak. "I can prove a lot, actually. Jessica Morrison and Rachel Kim have both agreed to speak publicly about their experiences with Marcus. We're working with a journalist to write an expose about predatory dating patterns. Your son is going to be a case study." This was a bluff. I hadn't contacted any journalists, but Patricia didn't know that. "You'd destroy his reputation over a few coffee dates?" Her voice was desperate now. "No, I'd destroy his reputation to save the next woman he tries to manipulate." I stood up, leaving money on the table for a meal we'd never eat. "Stay away from me, Mrs. Sterling. Stay away from my father. And maybe, for Marcus's sake, get some therapy and learn to let your son go." I walked out, leaving her sitting there in shock. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Marcus tried to reach out again, this time with angry, accusatory messages. I blocked him on everything and had building security add him to the no-entry list. Patricia attempted to spread rumors about me being a gold digger who'd tricked James Chen into believing I was his daughter. James responded by having his lawyers send her a cease and desist letter and releasing the DNA test results to a select group of business associates with my permission. Then the real revenge came, and it was sweeter than I'd imagined. Sarah, my college friend, told me that Marcus had started dating a new woman, a wealthy doctor named Amanda Chen, no relation to James, who seemed confident and successful. I was happy for Amanda, hoping she'd be stronger than I'd been. But then Sarah sent me a screenshot of a post from Amanda's private Instagram, shared with her close friends. It showed a text conversation with Marcus canceling their date because his mother needed him to help her with some household emergency. Amanda's caption, "This is the third time this month, I'm done." She'd dumped him publicly with receipts. And because Amanda had a much larger social media presence than I'd ever had, the story spread. Women started commenting with their own stories about Marcus, about Patricia, about the pattern of behavior. Marcus Sterling became a cautionary tale, a meme, a warning other women shared. His social media went private, his job prospects dried up. No one wanted to hire the guy who'd been exposed as a manipulative mama's boy. Patricia's book club dropped her when the extent of her interference in Marcus's relationships became public knowledge. They weren't ruined financially, but they were ruined socially. And for people like them, whose entire identity was built on manipulation and control, that was worse than bankruptcy. 6 months after my rebirth, James threw me the party he'd been wanting to organize. It was held at his penthouse with a stunning view of the city and a guest list that read like a who's who of tech and business. I wore a dress my mother would have loved, Elizabeth's favorite color, midnight blue, with delicate silver embroidery that caught the light. James cried when he saw me, then apologized for crying, then cried more when I hugged him. "I wish she could see you," he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "She'd be so proud." "I wish I could have known her," I replied, "but I'm grateful I know you." The party was everything I'd never allowed myself to dream of in my previous life. People were interested in my ideas, my work, my thoughts, not because of who I was dating or who my father was, but because I was genuinely good at what I did. Sarah was there, along with some other friends from college who'd drifted away in my previous life, but who'd stuck around in this one because I'd actually shown up for them. We laughed about old times and made plans for the future. At one point, I excused myself to get some air on the balcony. The city sparkled below me, full of possibility and life. "There you are," James said, joining me. "You okay? Not overwhelmed, eh?" "I'm perfect," I said honestly. For the first time in my life, in both my lives, I'm actually perfect. He squeezed my shoulder. "I have something for you. I was going to wait until the end of the party, but I can't hold it in anymore." He handed me a small box. Inside was a ring, not an engagement ring, but a family ring, an heirloom. "This was Elizabeth's," he said softly. "Her grandmother's originally. I want you to have it. You're the daughter she never got to raise, and you're the daughter I thought I'd lost forever. You're my family, Lily. You're my world." I slipped the ring on, and it fit perfectly. "I love you, Dad." It was the first time I'd called him that, and his face crumpled with joy. "I love you too, sweetheart. So much." A year after my rebirth, I was named Executive Vice President of Chen Industries, heading up a new division focused on digital design and user experience. I'd built a team of brilliant creatives, and we were revolutionizing the company's product line. I'd also moved into my own penthouse, not in James's building because I needed to establish my independence, but close enough that we could have dinner together several times a week. Sarah got engaged to a wonderful woman named Priya, and I was asked to be a bridesmaid. At the engagement party, I met Priya's brother David, who was funny and kind and showed up exactly when he said he would. We went on a date, then another, then another. "I like you," David said after our 5th date. "I really, really like you. And I want you to know that I'm going to keep showing up. I'm not going anywhere." I believed him because I'd learned to trust my instincts, and every instinct I had told me David was good. We took it slow. There was no love bombing, no rush, no pressure. Just two people getting to know each other, building something real and solid. On our 6-month anniversary, David met James. I was nervous. This was the first person I'd introduced to my father, and it felt momentous, but I needn't have worried. "He respects you," James said after dinner. "He listens when you talk, he's proud of your accomplishments, and he didn't once try to dominate the conversation or make himself the center of attention. I approve." "I'm glad," I said, hugging him, "because I really like him." "You deserve someone who really likes you back," James replied. "You deserve everything, Lily." 2 years after my rebirth, Marcus Sterling got married. I saw the announcement on social media, a woman named Jennifer, plain and kind-looking, smiling nervously in a dress that was probably more expensive than she was comfortable with. I felt a pang of sympathy for Jennifer. I hoped she was stronger than I'd been, that she'd set boundaries, that Patricia wouldn't destroy her. But I couldn't save her. She had to save herself, just like I'd saved myself. I sent a mental wish for her happiness and then deleted the tab. Marcus Sterling was part of my past, a past I'd already lived and overcome. He had no place in my future. 3 years after my rebirth, David proposed. He didn't do it at a fancy restaurant or a public place where I'd feel pressured to say yes. He did it on a quiet Sunday morning in my apartment, while we were making pancakes and arguing about whether chocolate chips belonged in breakfast food. Yes, I said before he even finished asking. Yes, absolutely yes. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony. Sarah was my maid of honor. James walked me down the aisle crying the whole way. David's family welcomed me with open arms. At the reception, James gave a toast. I spent 28 years looking for my daughter, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And when I found her, she'd already learned to save herself. She didn't need me to rescue her. She'd already done that on her own. All I could do was love her and be proud of her, which is the easiest thing I've ever done. I cried through the whole speech, happy tears this time, healing tears. 5 years after my rebirth, the anniversary of my death in my previous life, I woke up in a bed I shared with someone who loved me, in a home I'd chosen, in a life I'd built. David was already awake, watching me with that soft smile he always had in the mornings. Happy anniversary of being alive, he said, pulling me close. Is that really what we're celebrating? I laughed. We can celebrate anything we want. That's the beauty of it. I kissed him, then got up to start the day. James was coming over for brunch, and I'd promised to make Elizabeth's recipe for lemon scones. He'd found her old recipe box in storage and shared it with me. As I mixed the ingredients, I thought about my previous life. About the Lily who'd died alone and heartbroken, waiting for someone who would never prioritize her. About the years I'd wasted on Marcus, on trying to win Patricia's approval, on making myself smaller so others would love me. That Lily was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who understood that real love didn't require you to disappear. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Priya and I are expecting. You're going to be an auntie. I sent back a stream of congratulatory emojis, my heart full. Another message came in, this one from work. The new product line is exceeding all projections. VP Chen, you're a genius. I smiled. I'd worked hard for that success. I'd earned it. David came into the kitchen, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. Something smells amazing. That's Elizabeth's recipe working its magic. I leaned back against him. Thank you. For what? For showing up, for staying, for choosing me every day. He turned me around to face him. Lily, you're the easiest person in the world to choose. You always will be. The doorbell rang, James right on time. I opened the door to my father, my real father, the one who'd never stopped looking for me, even when I'd disappeared, and I felt the last piece of my broken heart click into place. 10 years after my rebirth, I stood at a podium addressing an auditorium full of young women. James had asked me to speak at the annual Elizabeth Chen Memorial Scholarship Ceremony, the foundation he'd created in my mother's name, and I'd agreed. I want to tell you a story, I said to the sea of faces looking up at me, about a woman who died at 28 years old, never knowing her own worth, who spent her life making herself small to fit into spaces where she was never wanted, who believed that love meant accepting less than she deserved. I paused, gathering my thoughts. That woman was me. In another life, in another timeline, I was her, and I died alone, broken, waiting for someone to finally choose me. The audience was completely silent. But I got a second chance. And in that second chance, I learned something vital. You can't wait for someone else to save you. You can't make yourself smaller in hopes that someone will finally see you. You have to save yourself. You have to choose yourself. I looked out at all those young faces, full of hope and potential. I'm not going to tell you that it's easy. It's not. It's terrifying to walk away from people who say they love you, but treat you like you're disposable. It's hard to set boundaries and risk being called selfish or difficult. It's lonely sometimes, standing up for yourself. But it's worth it, because on the other side of that fear is a life where you're not waiting for permission to be happy. You're not accepting scraps from people who should be giving you the whole meal. You're building something real, something solid, something yours. I smiled, thinking of David, of James, of the life I'd built from the ashes of my previous one. My mother, my biological mother, Elizabeth Chen, died bringing me into this world. She never got to see me grow up, never got to know me. But I carry her with me every day, and I think she'd want me to tell you this. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. Your value doesn't decrease because someone else can't see it. You are enough, you have always been enough, and you deserve someone who shows up, who stays, who chooses you first, every single time. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 22, and she looked nervous. Ms. Chen, I just wanted to say thank you for your speech. There's this guy I've been dating, and he keeps canceling our plans. And I've been making excuses for him. But hearing you talk, I think I need to end it. I took her hand. What's your name? Sophie. Sophie, I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had told me. It's okay to have standards. It's okay to expect someone to treat you well. And it's definitely okay to walk away from anyone who makes you feel like you're asking for too much when all you want is basic respect and consistency. Her eyes filled with tears. But what if no one else wants me? Then you'll have yourself. And that's better than having someone who doesn't value you. I squeezed her hand. Besides, I promise you, there are people out there who will be thrilled to show up for you. Don't settle for less. She hugged me, thanked me, and left. I watched her go and sent up a silent prayer that she'd find her strength, that she wouldn't waste years on someone who didn't deserve her. That night, David and I sat on our balcony watching the city lights. We'd been married for 7 years, together for 9, and every day with him still felt like a gift. You were amazing today, he said, holding my hand. Elizabeth would have been so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I was thinking about the other timeline today, I admitted. About the life I didn't live. The choices I didn't make. I died on my 28th birthday in that other life. Alone in an apartment I couldn't really afford, waiting for someone who was never coming home. David pulled me closer. But you're here now. You're alive. You're happy. I am. I turned to look at him. Do you ever wonder why I got a second chance? Why I was the one who got to come back and fix everything? I don't know, he said honestly, but I'm grateful every day that you did. Selfishly, because it means I got to meet you, but also because you've helped so many other people. All those women at the scholarship ceremony, all the people on your team at work, everyone who's heard your story, you've shown them it's possible to change your life. I couldn't have done it without finding James, I said. Without having that unfair advantage. The advantage of having someone who believed in you? David shook his head. Maybe. But you're the one who called him. You're the one who chose to try again. You're the one who walked away from Marcus and built something better. James gave you opportunities, but you made the choices. He was right. I had made the choices, and I would keep making them every day for the rest of this second life I'd been given. 15 years after my rebirth, James passed away peacefully in his sleep at 77. He'd lived long enough to meet his grandchildren. David and I had 2 kids by then, Elizabeth and James Jr., and to see Chen Industries become one of the most innovative tech companies in the world. At his funeral, I gave the eulogy. I talked about his determination, his love, his refusal to ever stop searching. I talked about how he'd given me more than money or status. He'd given me the knowledge that I was wanted, valued, loved. My father spent 28 years searching for me, I said, looking out at the hundreds of people who'd come to pay their respects. And when he found me, he didn't just welcome me into his life, he showed me what real love looks like. Love that shows up, love that stays, love that doesn't require you to be anyone other than who you are. I paused, composing myself. I got to have him for 15 years. It wasn't enough time, it never would have been, but I'm grateful for every moment. And I promised to honor his memory by continuing his work, by showing his grandchildren the values he held dear, and by never forgetting that I'm here because he never gave up. After the service, going through his things, I found a letter addressed to me, his handwriting, written weeks before his death. My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And while I hate to leave you, I want you to know that the last 15 years of my life have been the happiest I've known since Elizabeth died. You gave me back my daughter. You gave me back my purpose. You gave me back my heart. I know you sometimes feel guilty, like you wasted time in your previous life, like you should have found me sooner. But I want you to understand something. You found me exactly when you needed to, not a moment too soon or too late. And the woman who called me that day was strong enough to build the life you have now. The woman from your previous life wouldn't have been ready. Everything happened exactly as it needed to, including, I believe, your death and rebirth. Some might call it impossible, a fantasy. But I've learned that love transcends logic. If Elizabeth's love could give me the strength to search for 28 years, why couldn't your mother's love give you the strength to come back and try again? Live well, my daughter. Love well. And remember, you were always worth fighting for. You were always worth finding. You were always enough. All my love, Dad, I cried for 3 days. Then I dried my tears, gathered my family, and got back to work because that's what James would have wanted. That's what Elizabeth would have wanted. That's what I wanted. 20 years after my rebirth, on what would have been my 48th birthday in my original timeline, but was actually my 43rd in this one, I sat in the CEO's office at Chen Industries. James had left the company to me, and I'd worked hard to earn my place there, not just inherit it. My assistant knocked on my door. Ms. Chen, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's personal. I looked up from my work. Who is it? A Jennifer Sterling. The name sent a jolt through me. Marcus's wife. The woman from the wedding announcement I'd seen all those years ago. Send her in, I said, curious despite myself. Jennifer Sterling walked into my office looking nothing like the nervous woman in the wedding photos. She was older now, harder, with circles under her eyes and a set to her jaw that spoke of survival. Thank you for seeing me, she said, sitting down without being invited. I know this is strange. We've never met. You're Marcus Sterling's wife, I said neutrally. Ex-wife. The divorce was finalized last month. She laughed bitterly. It only took me 12 years to realize what you figured out in a few weeks. I waited, saying nothing. I found your speech, Jennifer continued, the one you gave at the scholarship ceremony. Someone posted it online and it went viral a few years ago. I watched it and I saw my life, my marriage, my mother-in-law, everything. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Don't be sorry, be grateful you got out early. She leaned forward. Do you know what it's like to spend 12 years being someone's second choice? To plan your whole life around someone who will cancel on you for his mother without a second thought? To watch your dreams die because you're too busy being supportive of a man who will never support you back? Yes, I said quietly. I do know. She looked surprised. Right, your speech. You said you'd lived it. In another life. I smiled slightly. But yes, I know exactly what you're going through. What made you finally leave? Our 10th anniversary. I'd planned this big surprise party, invited all our friends, spent months organizing it. The day of, his mother called with an emergency. She'd gotten a flat tire and needed him to change it. He left, missed the entire party. And when I confronted him, he said I was being selfish, that his mother needed him. Jennifer's voice broke. That's when I realized I'd married a man who would never put me first. Ever. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know. That's why I'm here. She met my eyes. Your speech said you saved yourself. How? How did you do it? Because right now I feel like I wasted 12 years of my life and I don't know how to start over. I thought about my answer carefully. The truth is, I had help. I had my father who gave me resources and support. But before that, I had something more important. I had the knowledge that I deserved better. And once I knew that, really knew it in my bones, everything else followed. I don't know if I deserve better, Jennifer admitted. I feel so stupid, like I should have seen it coming. You're not stupid. You loved someone who wasn't capable of loving you back the way you needed. That's not stupidity, that's hope. And hope is brave. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a business card. This is the number for a therapist who specializes in recovery from emotionally abusive relationships. She helped me when I first started over. Tell her I sent you. Jennifer took the card with shaking hands. Thank you. I don't know why you're being so kind to me. You don't even know me. I know you, I said gently. I was you in another life. I could have been you in this one. You're here because you're ready to save yourself. That's the hardest part. Everything else is just logistics. She left with the card clutched in her hand and something like hope in her eyes. David found me sitting at my desk an hour later, staring out the window. Everything okay? He asked. Marcus Sterling's ex-wife came to see me today, I said. He sat down across from me. That must have been intense. It was like looking at a ghost, the ghost of who I would have been. I turned to him, I'd say, do you ever think about it? About how easily I could have ended up like her? How close I came to wasting this entire life too? But you didn't, David said firmly. You made different choices. You built a different life, and now you're helping other people make different choices too. I just keep thinking, what if I hadn't died? What if I'd lived in that first timeline? Would I still be with Marcus at 48? Would I have ever found the strength to leave? I don't know, David admitted. But I know that you're here now and you're using your second chance to make the world better. That's all anyone can do. He was right. I couldn't save the version of me that died alone at 28. But I could save the women who came after, who saw themselves in my story, who learned from my mistakes and my victories. That would have to be enough. 25 years after my rebirth, I published a memoir. It was called After Rebirth, How I Saved Myself, and it became an instant bestseller. In it, I told everything: the manipulation, the canceled dates, the death, the literal rebirth. I expected skepticism, expected people to call me crazy or attention-seeking. Instead, I received thousands of letters from women who said my story changed their lives. Women who left manipulative relationships, women who set boundaries with controlling family members, women who realized they deserved better and had the courage to reach for it. Not everyone believed the rebirth part was literally true. Most people thought it was a metaphor, but they believed the message. They believed in the power of choosing yourself. Marcus Sterling, now 53 and still living with his mother after Jennifer left him, tried to sue me for defamation. His lawyers backed off when I provided documentation of everything I'd written: the texts he'd sent me, the testimonies from his ex-girlfriends, the public records of his pattern of behavior. The lawsuit made national news. Far from ruining my reputation, it cemented my status as someone who wouldn't be silenced. Book sales tripled. Patricia Sterling gave exactly one interview to a sympathetic reporter who painted her as a devoted mother being attacked by a vindictive woman. The internet tore her apart. Comments filled with stories from other people who'd had emotionally incestuous relationships with their parents, who'd been taught to sacrifice their happiness for a parent's need for control. Patricia went silent after that, retreating into a life with only Marcus for company. Exactly the future she'd engineered and exactly the hell she deserved. 30 years after my rebirth, I'm 53 years old, the same age I would have been if I'd lived in my original timeline. But this life looks nothing like that one would have. I'm still CEO of Chen Industries, which is now a global powerhouse. My children are grown. Elizabeth is following in her grandmother's footsteps as a scientist, while James Jr. is pursuing art. David and I just celebrated our 27th wedding anniversary. I have everything I died wanting in my previous life: love, success, respect, happiness. But more than that, I have peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you fought for yourself, that you didn't settle, that you built a life worth living. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the other Lily, the one who died at 28. I think about her last moments, alone in that apartment, wondering why she wasn't enough. I hope, wherever she is, she knows that she was always enough. That she wasn't the problem. The people who couldn't see her worth were the problem. That her death wasn't a waste because it gave me the chance to live differently. I hope she's proud of what I built from the ashes of her life. And I hope that every woman who reads this story, who sees herself in that lonely girl waiting for someone to choose her, knows this truth. You can choose yourself. You can build a different life. You can start over with or without the literal rebirth. The power to save yourself was always yours. You just had to be brave enough to use it. On my 53rd birthday, David, my children, and I visit James's grave. We bring flowers and Elizabeth's lemon scones, which have become a family tradition. Tell us the story again, Elizabeth asks, even though she's heard it 100 times. About how Grandpa never gave up. So I tell them. About James Chen, who searched for 28 years. About Elizabeth Chen, who died bringing me into this world. About the woman I was, who died alone. And the woman I became, who learned to live fully. About how love, real love, never requires you to make yourself smaller. Real love shows up. Real love stays. Real love chooses you every single time without hesitation or excuses. That's what you and Dad have, Elizabeth says wisely, though she's only 25. That's what I hope you'll have someday, I reply. What you both will have. Someone who sees your worth and never makes you doubt it. James Jr., my gentle artist son, puts his arm around me. You taught us what to look for, Mom. We'll never settle for less. And I believe them, because they grew up seeing what real love looks like, seeing a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. They'll never accept the scraps I once thought were a feast. That, more than the company or the success or the wealth, is my real legacy. Two humans who know their worth and will never let anyone diminish it. As we leave the cemetery, my phone buzzes. It's a message from a number I don't recognize. I read your book. I left him. Thank you for showing me the way out. Thank you for proving it was possible. I smile and send back, I'm so proud of you. Now go build your beautiful life. Another woman said, another heart unbroken. Another future rewritten. Marcus Sterling canceled our date 30 years ago, thinking it was just another manipulation, another step in his pattern. He didn't know he was giving me the greatest gift of my life, the final proof I needed that he would never change, the push I needed to choose differently. He tried to break me down. Instead, he freed me. And when I canceled our future, when I walked away and built something real and true and mine, I didn't just save myself. I saved every woman who came after me, who read my story and realized she deserved better too. That's the real victory. Not the wealth or the revenge or the public ruin of my enemies, though those were satisfying in their way. The real victory is the life I built, the love I found, the peace I earned. Marcus Sterling canceled our date, I canceled our future. And in doing so, I finally found mine.